Okay, so I tried to do some short little video blogs. It ended up being 30 minutes because I didn't realize I was talking so much because I have this tendency to ramble. So I'm gonna really try to keep these short. So there was a church in Memphis in 2011 that I became acquainted with while I was working at Petco. It's a fun little story. If you want, I'll expand on it sometime. Just ask. But it really helps knock down the wall, or kind of put cracks in the walls, I guess, of the doctrines that kept me from having a holistic spiritual experience. It was short-lived for only about 6-7 months, maybe. Then the church disbanded. It was small, 6 to 12 people at the most. It's called that church because I guess they didn't want labels, so that church. Anyway, when I came to Alabama, one of the requirements for me living with my grandmother was that I went to church. And I went to church with her at Xiii, which I've been to before, and I knew I didn't like it, but I went anyway. Two things that really stuck out with me there that really set me on a path to actually seek a church instead of doing it because my arm was being twisted was, one, they were singing the song Sing and Be Happy, which is about as bubblegum poppy for a acapella song as you can get. And in a crowd of 200 people, it's just droning on, and no one is smiling. And I'm like, you're singing Sing and Be Happy, and you're miserable. Two, I've seen that before, by the way. Two, the sermon was why you should be a Christian. And this is being taught to like 200 Christians. And the reason, for the top three, there were 5. I don't even remember the other 2 because I was crying, literally crying by the time the sermon was over, because the first one was so you can go to heaven. Okay, yeah, that's nice. Number 2, so God will hear your prayers. Where does that even come from? Number 3 was so you don't go to hell. The only time love was mentioned in the entire sermon was when he just offhandedly threw in John 3:16, I guess just so he could knock it off the list of things you have to talk about on Sunday. But it had nothing to do with the context of what he was presenting. So I left there, called friend David from college and was like, dude, just related the experience, was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got to find a Church of Christ to go to, if I'm going to stay with my grandmother, because I cannot keep going to this church. He tells me about Crosspoint. I go on Sunday. It was very welcoming, especially for someone who is an alternative appearance. I was very surprised, especially considering the size of the church. I had never really seen a borderline mega church of Church of Christ. And so that was an interesting experience, and it was pleasant because people were actually nice, and I didn't get, offhanded comments or sneers, from my appearance. It was like, hey, how's it going? Genuine kindness. That Wednesday, I had been job hunting and whatnot in Florence, and I drove the 30 minutes back to my grandmother's, and I really did not feel like going back out. But it came to her saying, look, here's $10 for gas, go to church, I want you to go to church. So I go, and I throw $5 in the tank and buy a pack of cigs with the other 5, because I just really didn't care at that point. Like, I was just completely demotivated, and that's where I was at, and I go in, and I sit in the auditorium with the adult class, and this guy named Sonny comes up. And I recognized Sonny from my grandfather's funeral earlier that year, and Sonny is the guy who married my parents. And so we're kind of chit-chatting for a second, and he's like, hey, did you know there was a college class? And I was like, well, I'm not in college. He was like, well, yeah, but there's people who aren't in college in there, and some of them are even 29. He's like, so let's go down there. And I was like, all right, cool. And so he introduced me to the teachers, who are his daughter, Trina, and his son-in-law, Jerry. And we sit down in this, or I sit down in this class of about 30 college kids that I do not know, and they're watching the Holy Spirit video of Francis Chan's Basic series, which I had not heard of at this time. And we watched this video, and you can YouTube it. I believe you can find it on there for free if you want to kind of know what I'm talking about here. And so Francis is talking about his understandings of the Holy Spirit and kind of how we've tried to control things and just do things because it seems right, like build big churches. Is that not bringing in people? Oh, well, you know, let's have big revivals and VBSs. Is that not really working? You know, oh man, well, what's going on? And he said, well, maybe we need to do like the first church and kind of let go and let the Spirit move, because, you know, we have this Spirit of God within us that can guide us, and it's supposed to guide us into all truth, and why don't we use that? And it was talking about kind of like relinquishing that power and letting the Spirit move as opposed to just trying. And the whole time there's this pantomime going on, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good expression of what he was trying to get across. And but I began crying again during this video because I'm just like, this is excellent. This is new. This is, to me, you know, if this is right, this is beautiful, and this is right on line with what I've been experiencing at that church. But then I started crying because I realized, holy crap, I'm in a Church of Christ and they're going to tear this apart. Because as far as my experience had been with the Church of Christ, this was not in keeping with their standards. And I just begged God, I was like, please just let us have a good discussion on this afterwards. It ends, Jerry's like, you know, I really love these videos and what he talks about, but I have no idea what these little skits are. I don't understand them at all. And so I was like, what? You didn't understand it? But he didn't hear. You know, just 2 or 3 people in the back of the room with me heard. And someone on the master's like, well, what did it mean? And I started to explain, but I was like, he's still talking, and I was like, I'm not going to interrupt. I'll tell you later. And she says, hey, everybody, shut up. This guy understands the video. And so 30 heads all turn towards me, and I'm like, okay, here. And I give my interpretation of what I saw and what I gathered from it. And everybody in the room's like, oh, wow. You know. And Jerry says, oh, this is James. He's visiting. Thus began my experience with the Xiii, or the college-age young adult group at Crosspoint. So I'm going to stop there so you don't get too bored with me talking, and I'll pick back up in the next video. Thanks.